Yes is all I get?
Yeah, no, okay.
Oh.
The County Board of Supervisors August 18th meeting notice and agenda was posted in the Government Center building in 2 places, posted on the county website on August 7th, 2020, and was published in a legal newspaper the week of August 10th, 2020. In addition, on Friday, August 7th, 2020, at 11:46 a.m., the Office of the County Clerk distributed copies of such notice of meeting along with any of the available proposed resolutions to supervisors via email or mail. The notice of amended agenda was posted in the Government Center, posted on the county website, and copies of such notice of meeting with any additional proposed resolutions were distributed to the supervisors and media via email on Saturday, August 15th, 2020.
Thank you. Corporation Counsel, does that meet the proper notice?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Roll call?
All right. Jay Luke. Fran Duncanson. Russ Arkand. John Bonaprise.
Here.
Joe Demeling.
Here.
Brad Olson.
He's excused.
Okay. Doug Rowdy.
Here.
Steve Warndall.
Here.
Chris Nelson.
Here.
Tracy LeBlanc. Here. Dan Ruck.
Yes.
Michael Pritchard. I think he's still getting set up in the
He's here.
other room. Yep. All right. Sharon Kelly. Kim O'Connell. Amy Middleton.
She's excused.
Okay. So we have 13 of the 15.
Okay, we're good. Number 4, Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Number 5, disclosure of board member conflicts of interest. Again, we just ask that you raise your hand while we're in discussion and notify us at that time. Number 6, approval of the agenda. I believe we have a, do you need to make a motion first, or do you make the changes now? Mike? Wait for.
I move the approval of the agenda with the changes to follow.
We need a second on that, or just?
I'll second.
We've got a second by Supervisor O'Connell. We do have some corrections to the agenda.
All right, I'd like to move 20A and 20D to the consent agenda and strike 20B.
So we're gonna move 20A and 20D to the consent agenda and strike 20B.
Correct.
Do we have a? Do we need a second on that then? You, John, you're good with that?
Yes.
Changing the agenda?
With those,
So I'll repeat it again. So we're going to move 20A and 20D to the consent agenda. They're just zoning changes. And 20B is going to be struck due to the fact that that resolution, correct, Mr. Rowdy, that that actually was not approved in Environmental Services Committee. It got sent back. A was approved and D was approved.
move for approval.
And there's going to be some discussion on C. That's why we didn't put that on there. There's going to be a presentation. We have to vote on C. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Matters offered for the adoption of the consent agenda. Consideration correction to the published minutes from July 21st, 2020 County Board meeting. We have a motion to approve the minutes. And the other items that were moved to the consent agenda. Motion by LeBlanc, second by O'Connell. Any other discussion? All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, carried. public comments. We have 3 minutes per person, not to exceed 30 minutes. Do we have public comments out there?
We do have one public comment.
Okay, so stand or sit?
You can stand.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Reverend Donna Martinson. I am a United Methodist pastor living in Garfield Township, planning for sustainable farming as a retirement project. I am here as a participant in Amory United, which is advocating taking steps for Amory to be an anti-racist community. In reading about the purpose and values that the county board has, I found these words on the website: to protect the interests of their constituents. And secondly, that the Pledge of Allegiance shall be recited, which includes the words, liberty and justice for all. And finally, in financial matters, there shall be fiscal transparency based on a code of good practices, which includes independent assurances of integrity. Protect the interests of all constituents with a commitment to liberty and justice, with transparent financial procedures which have integrity. If this is how our county supervisors want to do their work, then those serving as district supervisors and those appointed to regional committees must also be held to these high standards. On behalf of Amory United, I raise the question of Mr. Magnifici's suitability to represent us on the West Central Wisconsin Planning Commission in light of the values we expect the county board to uphold. On April 6th, Mr. Magnifici posted this statement on Facebook. I will read it exactly as he posted it because we would like it on the record, with a vote, end quote. We also have concerns about Sharon Kelly's suitability for the role of District 6 supervisor, as we reviewed her public comments posted on the St. Croix Falls Public Library page about Black Lives Matter on July 15th of this year. They have since been deleted. Ms. Kelly concluded by writing these false, racist, and inflammatory statements. Black Lives Matter burns our cities, is hell-bent on destroying our society, and is demanding the defunding of our police departments. And you, the public library, support that? Integrity, protection for all constituents, transparency. How do Kelly and Magnifici measure up? Aren't there others we would be proud to have represent all of us? Thank you.
Just a comment on public comments. Those comments will be redacted in the public it's basically when this gets done, right? Is that how we handle that, Ms. Malone, when we use language like that at public comment?
Correct. We will bleep out the inappropriate language and then post a notice that anybody who wishes to review the unredacted can come in and view it, but the public, just in case there are, sensitive, yes.
Sure. So appreciate like issues like that from the public. They can submit those in writing, but I think that shows poor character on public comments when you use that kind of language. Is there any other public comment?
That's it.
That's it.
Poor character on Mr. Magnifici's part.
Yeah.
Lisa, do you have any other public comment that you're aware of? Is anyone on WebEx or lined up that would want to make public comment? We'll take just a second here to see if there's anyone out there that wants to make public comment. Anyone that wants to make public comment, if we can't tell by unmuting you, if you could raise your hand. Anyone that is on video? Well, if any public comment, if you didn't get an opportunity, you can certainly send it in to us in writing too, and apologize if anyone wanted to and we can't hear you. Okay, we'll move on. Seeing no further public comment. County Board Chair's report. A would be, I think I'll do my quick chair report, and that's really got mostly B. I attended all the committee meetings this month and tried to talk to supervisors about how do we get things on the agenda, how are we going to conduct business, how do we move things forward when you feel like you hit a wall. And I just wanted to say again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but you have 4 ways to get things on the agenda. A supervisor can ask the administrator, corporation counsel, their committee, or the chair. And I just want to assure everyone that there is no reason not to get something on the agenda. So if you guys run into a wall, I'm certainly available to work with staff to help get things on the agenda. But again, it's in the light of the public, and I feel stronger than ever as the chair now when I see some of the stuff in the background that we really do need to get them on the agendas. And even if it's about moving something forward where you feel like you're getting a roadblock, go to a committee. And if your committees won't let you get on the agenda, go to executive committee and bring your issues up too, because that's the place where we can handle those issues in conflicts with committees. So I'm going to leave it at that. I've said enough this month about it. Supervisor's report from outside meetings. Does anyone have anything? Just raise their hand and we'll acknowledge you.
Yes,
John, you want to put your mic on?
last Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, Jay, Luke, and I, we attended the Wisconsin County Highways Conference at the Chula Vista. It was, I've been to a lot of these, and probably this was one of the most informative ones that we had. Ron and Rebecca from the Department of Transportation, I'd say they both had about an hour presentation on the video, Jay, wouldn't you think? And then they asked for comments. And I had 2 comments. And the first one was, I said, I travel Minnesota every week, and the clearance right away in Minnesota and in our townships, they mow everything from right away to right away. And our county and our state, it's just terrible. Like from here to Centuria, there's trees and brush that are growing up into the power lines. And when you have to finally do it with chainsaws and chippers, I said, that's an expensive way. Can we have that addressed? And the big thing was, and I've talked to St. Croix County and other municipalities about this. Highway 65, since the Stillwater Bridge has been open, the traffic is more than doubled. I talked to Mo about this, and it's so dangerous. And I said it's the most logical way. There's not a stop sign from Highway 64 to number 8, and the DOT is looking for ways to move the traffic north. Highway 35, you got Somerset, Osceola, St. Croix Falls is not adaptable truck traffic at all. And almost the same way with 46 and 63. And they were I was surprised. I got a call, and Jay got a call on a follow-up about our comments from the DOT in Madison. Tim Mason called us, Jay. Yeah, and I've got it on my phone here. I was going to play it, but I'll just tell you. And so he said, I'm responding. He was out of the DOT office in Eau Claire. And he said, I'm responding to your comments. And he was directed by the director at Madison, Rebecca. And and he called me back then later, and we talked for a good half an hour. And they're very well of the project. And I think we're going to, he said, do you think there's some, a lot of things, and I believe 24, he told me, resurfacing and some curves. that were going to be addressed in 24. And he said, do you think that it's more urgent than that? And I responded to him and I said, it's more than urgent. It's a critical situation. And I said, in Polk County, we kind of regard that as a horse trail. And their key word for it in Madison, he said, I'm familiar with it. And he said, it's not a horse trail. We call it a goat trail. So they're pretty well, and you know, it's from over till you get to Polk County. Highway 65 is a beautiful road. It's just Polk County is always wanted the county to take it over, and we're smarter than that.
Okay.
So that's the report on that. We were very well accepted, and
Thanks, John.
it was really good.
Anything else? Okay. Now, administrator, are you going to talk right now? Because you're on 11.
Oh, you've got to do that.
It's okay if you want. I'm more than willing to give this job up any day of the week. Supervisory discussion, the supervisors there. Confirmation appointments. So these are appointments made by the county board chair. On the Apple River Protection and Rehabilitation District appointment would be Supervisor Duncanson is being appointed to that. West Cap Board of Directors, that was, that was Larry Jepson that did that in the previous time as the county board chair. I don't know if anyone wants that job to raise their hand. Now, Jay, you want to do that? Okay. Well, then I will appoint Supervisor Luke to that. That was easy. Thanks, Jay. And so West Cap. Administrator's report. Do I need confirmation of those?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I'll move for confirmation.
do we have a second? Second by Supervisor Warndall. All in favor by saying aye. Opposed? Carried.
Thank you. I'm going to combine on the agenda numbers 11 and 12. Tanya Eichelt on number 12 was our division director for community services. We're going to do the COVID-19 update. She could not make it. She had a matter outside of here that she could not be here. So I'm going to combine them, and I'll start with COVID-19 to tell you that to date, year-to-date count for infection rate or for total count is 148. That's a cumulative, so that's the total number. The infection rate for Polk County is 2.15%. That compares with the state of Wisconsin, which is at 5.8%. Currently, in our county, there are 13 people who are isolated with the virus, which is a number that has been shrinking. And I think the reason, I was talking to one of the nurses and she confirmed that it seems like the people who are contracting it now are having symptoms last not as long and not as serious. Now, that's a very general statement, but I think it's encouraging that people are dropping off of the isolation list faster than they are actually contracting it, and that there are 0 people hospitalized. The key message to our citizens is stay vigilant, stay serious. This can spread, and school is starting, so we want to do all we can to keep people safe. With that in mind, I want to give a tip of the hat to all of the Polk County staff. As the administrator, I see what they do every day to keep this place clean, sterilized. They are adapting their work schedules. They're adapting the time they spend at work. They have to change their roles, their places. It's stressful as it is on everybody. And I just want to thank them and hope that you all recognize all that they do in all of our buildings. And it is impressive. Also, the fact that we continue to keep our expenses down. Each division has done a great job of keeping expenses down. Our total spend, COVID related, so far has been about $120,000. And as you know, much of that we think will be reimbursed. And so hats off to Chad, the division directors, and all their staff. Speaking of reimbursement, if you recall last summer, we had the storms and we spent approximately $940,000 was spent in the cleanup and taking care of people and materials for that project. We have been working with FEMA for reimbursement. We're getting notifications, some money, and we expect in the next 60 days to have all the money that we're going to get reimbursed, and it totals $920,000. So the bottom line is we think it's going to cost the county about $20,000 after FEMA reimburses for what we spent. We'd earlier predicted it would cost us about $100,000. Special thanks to Chad Roberts. His work as really the kind of the incident command person last year that got us started in tracking it. Also Lisa McMahon with our emergency services. She's our emergency services specialist here. They did all this paperwork, or they spearheaded it and did a lot of it, as did a lot of people in different divisions. So hats off to them and to the staff. I want to remind everybody, you guys did a great job with the goals and priorities, and now the hard work begins. And each committee, each division director, we're going to be keeping that top of mind to make sure that those goals and priorities stay top of mind. And the timing is important, because as you start working on what you want to accomplish going forward, we work on the budget, we work on finding ways to find resources, and that's good. And I'm really excited. I want to tell you, to kind of tease you a little bit, coming up later tonight, one of our goals over this past year has been to identify areas of this organization that might need reorganized, that might need changed, stopped, given a new identity or whatever, and find areas where we're wasting money. And you're going to find later this evening an area where we found money that will be able to be applied to employees and to the priorities that you all have going forward. So Chad will be talking about that later. Finally, I know you've all been wondering about when we're going to improve our capabilities here in this boardroom with the audio system. It is on order. We just got word that they plan on delivering and installing on September 21st. And we're going to push to see if we can get that sped up, but it will be a series of microphones in here so you can put these things down. You don't have to reach and turn it on. And we think that will help the communication to the public and us. Last thing, the Parks and Trails Advisory Group, Bob Kazmierski, Ben, and I, and Tim have been working on interviewing people. We are starting the process, and by, I would say, sometime next week, we will have that committee formulated, and that's another big goal and priority that you guys determined, and we're moving on that. So you'll hear more of that in the future. Thank you.
Next is one of the most exciting things on the agenda, the audit report presentation. Jonathan's here. Chad will probably tee this up, and I know we've all had it in committee already. They're going to try to go through this a little quicker tonight.
Jonathan Sherwood is our lead auditor. We finished our audit up on July 30th. As I told everybody, it ran behind this year, COVID, them working remotely, changing staff, that kind of stuff. It came out pretty good. Jonathan's going to give you a 500-foot overview. I sent everybody the detailed executive summary as well as the full financial reports. So if you have any more questions, please feel free to reach out beyond what Jonathan says tonight.
All right, thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, fantastic. I'm trying to share my screen here to pull up the audit summary for you, but I'm not able to. So if everybody has that audit summary in front of them, actually maybe give me 2 seconds here. Hopefully you can see. It looks like you're seeing my audit summary here. Bear with me 1 second. All right, so to get things started, I'll echo what Chad was saying about kind of some of the delays and things that we experienced here in preparing the 2019 audits. Normally, we have everything done and wrapped up ahead of the June 30th deadline in Polk County's case, but due to COVID as well as some staff turnover there, we actually requested an extension from GFOA, who sets that deadline for us for our CAFR award letter. And we had everything wrapped up here in advance of that deadline. So again, I thank you for all the staff inputs and working with us to basically conduct completely virtual audits in order to get things done and wrapped up here as COVID is so impacted everybody's lives here. So to get things started, I'll go ahead and address a couple of different reports that we issue. The first being our audit opinion. So this is an audit opinion that we put on the big book, the 100+ page audit report that we issue. So this is our external independent auditor's report over the amounts and disclosures found within the financial statements. So we issue what's known as an unmodified, or also referred to as a clean opinion over the amounts and the disclosures. So it's the highest level of assurance that we can issue as an independent auditor, and that's what we strive to achieve throughout the year. Then also in preparation of the audit, we also do issue a report over the internal controls or the operations of the county. So we take a look at how things are operating, and then there's two what we designate as material weaknesses or issues that we have to bring up due to accounting standards. So there's nothing in here that should be new to anybody in the room that's heard this presentation before. The repeats of prior year findings, but they're of a level where I need to bring them up to you folks tonight, as it's very integral that you're part of the internal control structure in the overview of the finances of the county. So the first being material audit adjustments. That just basically simply means that through the course of our audit, we proposed audit adjustments that are large enough in scale that would impact the financial statements if they hadn't been made. The next one is limited segregations of duties. So this is what we basically look at within all of the departments throughout the county. We have very competent people doing their work within those departments, but if there's lack of duties, or there's lack of review of those or proper segregations, and that's just due to the limited scope and size of Polk County. So it's not financially possible at times to completely segregate these down to the level that would remove this finding. Lastly, real quick, the other regulatory reporting that we also prepare in conjunction with our audit, it's not just that full financial statements, but we also issue or help prepare the unaudited and audited versions of the Form A, that's a Department of Revenue required report, as well as we also assist in the compilation of the Highway Annual Report. And special thanks to Mo as well as Carrie over at Highway to help pull that report together. There were some struggles out there just due to the turnover in staff there, but I just want to thank them specifically on helping us get that one pulled together and all their efforts there. Now to dive into some high level numbers here, I'm not going to go through everything, but to get things started, this is the first item on this page here is the general fund. So this is the general operating fund of the county. The basically key metrics that we key in here are the items here that I have highlighted here for you. So we'll discuss these specifically. And this is basically, at the end of the day, what are the true reserves of the operations of Polk County? So we look at the total unassigned fund balance, which that's your basically true reserves again. You've got $13.5 million in unassigned fund balance at the end of the year. As an auditor, we always take a look at what metric we're going to calculate based on that number, and we use total general fund expenditures to create this next ratio down here at the bottom of this 50%. So basically what this is basically saying to us is the unassigned fund balance is going to account for about 50% of the general operations in a given year. So a general rule of thumb that we would tell counties is we like to have a minimum of about 33%. Said another way, if another pandemic COVID type situation hit and it was more severe and we needed to live off of this $13.5 million, how long could we keep the lights on and not have to, take out any debt, any borrowing, or that type of thing. So roughly we're at about a 6-month cushion as we currently sit. So 50% is definitely in excess of what that minimum target that we would recommend would be. Polk County, as a general policy, says it has a formal policy on the books that that number should be no less than 20%. If it would fall below 20%, the policy would be that the administrator would be directed to find ways in order to get up to that minimum 20% balance. So the good news is we're meeting our fund balance policy of the county. You're meeting what we would recommend as outside auditors say is a minimum. And then lastly, I would say that the other comment I have for you is the other 44 counties that CLA gets involved with in Northwest Wisconsin. The general benchmark there is about 48%. So that's how you compare to some of the other of the neighbors here in this part of the state. So you're right in line, just slightly above that that amount. Moving on here to the special revenue funds. So these are all the other funds that make up, they have a specific revenue source that is restricted for a specific purpose. Without getting into the numbers too much here for you, I do want to highlight just a few items here though for you. This first one, or these first two, I should say, of the Children and Families and Health Services Fund, annually by fund balance policy of the county, these are zeroed out and either covered or any excess is transferred over to the general fund. So for Children and Families in 2019, they transferred back just over $200,000 back to the general fund, where actually the Health Services Fund was the other story. They needed about an $8,000 transfer in to cover the operations of the Health Services Fund. The other item here that has also then been zeroed out the last number of years is this county sales tax fund. This policy started in about 2017, is at the end of the year, throughout the year, any revenues of the county sales tax fund is transferred over to the general fund. So the total transfer in 19 was about $3.7 million. That was about a $360,000 increase from 2018. Outside of that, these other funds that we're seeing here, the important thing from a board to look at and pay attention to is the general trend. These are all year-end balances of the fund balances. So those are the reserves at the end of the year for each of these funds. And if they're continually negative, I would recommend to take a look at the operations of those funds. And it's either can we increase as a charge for service in order to increase our revenues to meet that level of expenses, or the other side, is there any expenses that you could control in order to have a more favorable outcome at the end of the year. Moving on to item number 3 here on your debt service funds. This is basically a fund that we have set up that just pays all of the long-term debt obligations of the county. The reserve balance here is to meet future debt service needs. The story here for you is that the county is able to make all of the principal and interest payments that are required on an annual basis. So nothing to report there for you. Item number 4, you do have a brand new item here that wasn't out there in 2018, but you have a reserve at the end of the year set up for the general government's, the general county or general government center remodeling project. That was a $35,000 tax levy item that was set up during 2019. So that was the only activity there, is just establishing the fund and have a set aside for $35,000 for that project moving forward. Moving on to the enterprise funds. So here I'll just pause briefly and just say that up until this point, we were talking on the governmental method of accounting without getting too much in the details. Now we're talking full accrual accounting. So there'll be a few other items that I will repeat myself on a few times just so we can basically take that into consideration and compare apples to apples at the end of the day. So the first one being the nursing home. Earlier today, I did present to the HHS committee on the operations of the nursing home. The items that I basically brought up to them are the same ones I'll briefly mention here. There's a few non-cash items in here that we don't have to talk about earlier, but now do apply to the nursing home, specifically to the nature and how we account for things. So the item I'll draw everybody's attention to is down here at the bottom, this change in accounting, change the income or loss number down here, change in net position, very bottom number. And the nursing home, it appears on paper basically to start that we have about a $200,000 loss. There are two non-cash items, being depreciation as well as a WRS pension item, which basically means if we remove that activity, because it's two items that are kind of outside of our control on an operations standpoint, this number actually does flip to a net income number for the for Golden Age Manor. So it's actually positive results for 2019. So that was the case both in 18 and 19. We had some positive results there, trending in the right direction. So I know that the operations of the nursing home over the last number of years have been of interest to everybody just to keep an eye on. So happy to report that we have positive findings in the nursing home. Moving on to the Lime Fund, a little bit different story in Lime over the last number of years. We also are showing a negative change in net position, or a net loss of the year, of about $146,000. If we take into both of those two non-cash items I had mentioned earlier, they are actually still reporting a net loss in 2019. And I know there's been also extensive discussion on the Lime Fund and its operations as of late, but that's just where 2019 has ended up, for your information here. Moving on to what are designated as internal service funds, they operate very similar to the business type activities. So those two non-cash items that I mentioned also apply to the highway department here, which I'm speaking about next, as well as the health insurance fund, which is following. So same story here. We always like to take a look at how did the highway fund do for the year. At the bottom line number is, it is showing or reporting a $96,000 loss for the year. But again, if we do factor in those two non-cash items, specifically in the highway fund, the depreciation number, which obviously they have a lot of equipment and things that are paid for up front, and then we just basically expense those out as they age. This also would then flip to a positive net income number of roughly $1 million, believe it or not, for 2019. So results from operations in the highway department are actually fairly positive as well. To move on, real brief comments. I know Chad's exciting presentation coming up here. Speaking of the results of the health insurance fund, we had a strong year in the health insurance fund, change in net position of just $1 million, resulting in a fund balance of $6.5 million. And again, Chad is going to have a much more detailed and in-depth conversation of this fund here coming up. So because of that, I will skip down to my last point, which is the long-term obligations of Polk County here. Really no activity besides the, excuse me, besides the quote unquote good activity of you're paying down your debt from one year to the next. You've met all of the required principal and interest payments for the year, and your balance continues to decrease. The last item that I'll call to your attention is there is a statutory statutory limit as to the amount of debt that Polk County can issue, and it's calculated by taking 5% of the total equalized value of Polk County property. Of that total limit, of that total debt limit, you're actually only using 4.8% of that limit. From a county standpoint, it would be very unrealistic that you would ever get to anywhere near 100% of your legal debt limit. But if you would even exceed anywhere to 50% of that limit, mill rates would be completely out of control, and it's just strictly not feasible to get anything more than the most that we typically see is around 20%. Long story short, you have plenty of borrowing capacity if the need would arise to issue long-term debt. Other than that, if there's any questions that anybody has in the room, I'm more than happy to answer anything. Otherwise, there are a few other charts and graphs down here that shows kind of just some income of where things are coming from, but that's for information for you guys to review later. Otherwise, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Do we have any questions from the supervisors?
I'd like to see, from the auditor's standpoint, some suggestions or warnings from the scope of the whole project. Could you have any comments on that?
I part of that question, but I couldn't hear it.
Yeah, you gotta have a mic. John, I can probably answer it for him. He can't give you any advice. That's what I was told in our committee. Agreed. Supervisor Benson, yeah, he can't give us advice. You can ask Chad for advice. Maybe your question should go to Chad.
Well,
I'd like to see Chad.
I remember in the past, the auditors, when they had their final statement, they would give us some pointers of maybe improvement or warning.
So a few years ago, the audit profession changed substantially, and now they've got auditing separated from assurance and advisory. And Jonathan's job and his team's job is to confirm that what me and my staff are telling you is honest. They can only tell us if what we present is materially and factually true. Because of Enron, they separated out the duties. So you hire accountants to do your auditing, or you hire a separate batch of accountants to do your assurance and advisory. The way we're set up, they do our auditing, and my department serves as your assurance and advisory. It's just the way they changed after Enron changed everything.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we will move to 14, the health fund policy review. Chad came to the general government and made this same presentation, and I know some
It's the Excel.
Thanks, Jonathan, if you're still out there.
All right. So I sent each of you this health fund analysis report and these proposed policies. This is the gist of what it is. About early April, I started looking at the county overall, and one thing that stuck out was the health fund. So we are a self-managed health fund. What that means is we pay our own health bills. We hire a third party, in this case, Health Partners, to administer it for us. But everything that goes out of our pocket to pay for those bills. Now, we fund the health fund in two ways. Employees pay premiums, around 18%, and the county pays the employer portion around 82%. That equates to roughly $20,000 per employee per year from the county. The way self-funded should work is it should be a all-in, all-out account with a reserve set up. It should never have a climbing balance or a declining balance. It should have an evidence-based reserve. It should be zero at the beginning of the year, zero at the end of the year, except for the reserve. When I got to looking at it, what was odd, and not really odd, it's conservative management, and it's coming out of a rough time in our history as far as the economy goes, but we were climbing. So right here, you see this graph, and this is 2014 to 2020. So you see we're about 2.5 million in 2015, and now we've climbed this was April, we were at about 7.02 million. We're now at about 7.57 million. I just looked a minute ago. You saw at the end of the year, we added 1.065 million to the health fund. The problem with that is when you add money to the health fund, it's a restricted account. You can't use it for anything but health fund related matters. You can use it to pay insurance premiums. You can use it to improve employee wellness. You can use it to offset partial salaries, like a part of my salary for managing it, a part of an HR generalist for administering their wellness program. But that money can't be pulled back in. It's not like a rainy day fund. You never get it back. It's the health fund. So once you move that money, the employee's money and the taxpayer money over, it's reserved in the health fund. So I talked to Vince, and I wanted to hire an actuary to study the health fund, to look at it, to give us some evidence-based analysis that the auditors would support. So we entered into an agreement with an actuary, and they looked at our health fund, and I told them what I thought the problems were. The health fund looked heavily overfunded to me. It looked like we were paying too much in premiums for stop-loss insurance. And what stop-loss is you hit a certain point, like say you have a cancer patient who has massive health bills. Once they reach a certain dollar value, it reinsures you, and the insurance company pays the rest. We carry a $125,000 deductible, just like a car deductible. First $125 per incident is ours. After that, it's reinsured. That looked really, really low, and there were a couple other things that looked off. So the actuary looked at it. We spent a few months going back and forth. And the other ask I had of them is, if it was as it appeared to be, I wanted to come up with stabilization policies to add to our financial policies so that we manage the health fund correctly. It never ballooned up again and it never got low again. Kind of like the general fund where you have the 20% rule like Jonathan mentioned. I wanted to come up with a rule for the health fund. You can't just say 20% because health costs change, but you incur changes. The one other piece we didn't have is called an IBNR. It's an incurred but not received analysis. It's the health claims that are out there that we haven't had to pay yet, we haven't seen come in yet. And there's always health claims lingering out there. If you go to the hospital today, the way hospital billing is, sometimes you don't get a bill for 60, 90, 120 days. So you have to look at that. So we looked at those areas, and in looking at it, our IBNRs were about, we needed about a $323,000 reserve. For our claims, we needed about a $700,000 reserve. And that was very conservative. And that was the other tenet I told them, is that the county's conservative. We got to have a conservative approach. Normally they build a 10% conservative margin on top of their estimates. Because I said that, they built a 20% margin on top of their estimates. And because of COVID-19, they built a 50% margin. So it's a really, really conservative estimate. So their estimate and their analysis, and it's a very detailed analysis, they do it by looking 3 years in the past and 3 years in the future, what they see nationwide, what they've seen our particular track record be, is that our health fund should sit at $1 million right now. Our health fund sits north of 7, about 7.5. And we only have about 20,000 in outstanding bills right now. So even if you take out incurred but not received, we're still at 7.2 million in our health fund. So the question is, how do we bring that down? You got to bring it down slowly. You got to bring it down cautiously. You got to bring it down wisely. Because of COVID, we've chosen, meaning the actuaries and I have chosen, only to predict 2 years in the future and then to reassess in 2 years. And for the next 2 years, the actuaries recommend that we reduce funding to the health fund by $750,000 per year. What that equates to is that's operating expense money. So that is levy dollars we put in the health fund that, as you see, have just been adding to the health fund. We added 1.065 million this year. Even if you say a 2% increase in cost, we're still going to be adding a little more to the health fund next year. At the end of year 2, we're going to do a regular 3-year look ahead. Every 3 years, we'll do another analysis. And we'll look and see, and the actuaries will give us what their estimates are, where we either hold back or add to the health fund. Attached to that are the 3 policies I gave you. The IBNR reserve, which is what I mentioned to you, the incurred but not received. The fund stabilization policy, that's much like our fund balance policy, where we have it in our fiscal policy. This is how we'll reduce the health fund if it gets overfunded. This is how we'll raise the health fund if it becomes underfunded. And then the last policy, and I don't want to tell you the wrong titles, that's why I'm flipping to it, is the emergency reserve policy and methodology. That's the big reserve of around $700,000. So these 3 policies establish the fund, they establish how to manage the fund, and they establish how we keep it where it should be, which is 0 in, 0 out, except for the actuarial established reserve. The effect this has is positive. We're going to pull back, if you guys agree to these policies, $750,000 in operating expense from the health fund this year and next year. Now, our proposal or our thinking right now is we use 80% for operating expenses that the administrator determines, and we use 20% to improve employee wellness and benefits. We do that for the next 2 years. At the end of the second year, the actuarial studies it, and then we look 3 years into the future. And the actuarial's estimates, we're looking at several years of drawing the health fund down before it's at the estimate where it should be. And honestly, if you look at it, if you're talking about drawing $7 million down to right now $1 million, it's going to take a long time to draw that down. That's this in a nutshell. I hope I kind of explained it. But what I'm asking is for you to adopt the policies. Now, it is key. These are operating expenses. We rarely get a shot at these. These are not capital fund expenses. And for example, we got our projected levy for net new construction this year, and it's 1.08%. Last year it was 1.13%, which last year equated to about $220,000. So this year you're looking at about $205,000 to $210,000 of additional levy. This is just one of those areas Vince tasked the directors with looking at the areas of operation and see where we were doing things as we should be and where we should maybe look at changing how we do things. Any questions? That's all I've got.
Okay. Sure we'll be hearing about more of this later. Thank you very, very much, Chad. Supervisor Luke, do you want to take your comments back from last week? I'm good. Supervisor Bonifaz?
This health program that we're under now, this is what our former administrator initiated.
It is. And self-funded is very common. It's really common for governments. It's common in a lot of companies.
I'd never heard of it until we started it. But
I worked as a financial manager for a nonprofit that had a self-funded, a big nonprofit, several hundred employees. It's just you have to have policies surrounding it that keep it from ballooning up or having it go down. You want to get a stabilization policy in place. That's what I need, yeah.
Well, there was no action on this. It just says policy review. Are we allowed to make a motion on this? Is this something the board has to approve, Maria?
A motion is to adopt the policy, yes.
Do we have a motion to adopt the policies? Do we have a second? Second by Jay. Questions? Supervisor Rowdy?
I just wanted to be clear. I read through each one of those, and you're looking for a package of the three?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The three, what this will do is add those three specific policies to our existing financial policies, and I'll just codify them. You just have to adopt them when we change financial policies.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Chad? Being done. All in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. Do we have a motion to go into committee of the whole?
So moved.
Supervisor Wardall, second by Supervisor Demling. Any discussion? All in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. So we're in the committee of the whole. I think maybe I like our general government is who sent this to us, and we amended that in general government. Maybe chairman of general government can tell us why we got this on the agenda to be in committee of the whole. Maybe Supervisor Arcan.
Are you talking about having a presentation?
Yeah, and why
from
we're
Mold and
yeah.
Well, because I think general government is the only committee that's gotten the presentation, and if we're going to try to do something and advance it, surely we'd all want to be sharing the same information. So we just thought we could take a little time at this meeting so everyone can get the same information that we already have and either make a decision whether we're going to start moving forward, whether we're going to not go any further, just take a step.
Thank you. Mo?
Good evening. Tonight with us we have from World Architects, we have Joel Dunning and Melissa Stein. They're involved with the space needs analysis for the government center. They interviewed all departments involved in the government center on their needs, their traffic flow, how many customers they have coming in, and came up with a couple floor plans to make us a little more customer centric so that we have all our customers come in one door, one level, keeping in mind the elderly and our vets with that. So I'll introduce, have them come up and they'll give the presentation they gave the general government. We kind of broken this up into two phases. Phase one is more mechanical, HVAC, infrastructure based. The second part will show a little bit more of the office moves and what we're looking at right now and what the analysis showed us.
Thank you, Mo. I think we have the PowerPoint up. We were here last month and presented the summary of our report to the board. We returned after having presented it to the General Government Committee prior. Last week we presented more detailed information to General Government Committee, and there were certainly some good questions that came out of it, and we wanted to present that same opportunity for questions and answers about our study tonight. So pretty brief presentation. It's mostly an opportunity for questions by any of the supervisors. So you can go to the next slide. Really, we're just going to review the phase one, building maintenance, and phase two, building reorganization. And then we thought we'd share some of the example boardroom options that might be possible. Again, the focus of this effort was guided by these 7 guiding principles that were started or were developed by the core group of individuals from the county, from county staff who participated with us and guided the study. So I won't read those in detail, but they were as a part of the report. Next slide. The recommendation in the end did have 2 components. It was really looking at maintenance as phase one, $5.91 million estimated project cost. That includes about 80% of that is the construction cost, and the other 20% of that are miscellaneous pieces that go along with any sort of construction project, fees, testing, contingencies, other things like that. And then a second phase of effort is a $2 million recommended investment in reorganizing where departments are in this building to better customer service and better staff efficiency. So a total recommendation of $7.91 million. So going into detail on those 2 different phases, and the eventual construction sequencing might be overlapped, might certainly be managed. It's not necessarily schedule driven phase one, phase two, but the building maintenance is the bigger need. So that's more priority one. If you go to the next slide, this is a list of all of the projects that we recommend going forward with. There are another, I'll say another dozen or so that projects that we identified, maintenance upgrades and so on that we identified during our review of the government center here. But we felt like they were not priorities to move forward now. There are things that need to be looked at maybe in the future, but not as high a priority as these. All the items that list 1974 before the description are all items that serve just this older 3-story portion of the building. The building automation system, the head end and distribution, the water softeners, water heater, fire alarm replacement, backup power generator, and communication room grounding affects both the 1974 building and the 2004 portion of the building that is human services. We did have, you can go back to that, we did break down every one of the items is, we estimated costs based on precedent, similar projects, square footage affected, other things like that, just industry standard current day costs, projected forward, next year's costs, I'll say, for replacement of these maintenance projects. As you can see, it's heavily leans towards the maintenance, the boilers, the ventilation, the lighting, the infrastructure of the building is a lot of those elements are original to the building and are past their life expectancy. The facilities group has been doing a great job keeping things running, But there's a reason that certain things are supposed to only last 30 years. They get, very likely to have a catastrophic breakdown at a certain point, and it's good. It's good to do preventative replacement before that happens. So I'll entertain any questions on any of these items that are on this list. Now we have more information. Certainly, this is just a heading of all of them. If that's an appropriate time to take questions.
Does anyone have any questions? That was easy. We had a lot of questions in general government forum, so we did go through a lot of this. Well, I'm part of that committee, so I include everybody.
Are the questions right now specific to what's on the board?
Yeah, I mean, I would say right now, you can see through there all the different things. I mean, I did have a question. Seemed like $80,000 per bathroom for ADA seemed kind of high, and he answered my questions. And we had some questions about moving the boardroom. Is that in this phase or next phase? Next phase. We questioned phasing. I was a little concerned about, why is it broke down to phasing when it's really going to all overlap? It's really one project. I still I can't remember what the answer was. I mean, that was maybe more Mo or Chad or Vince that could talk about why it's explained to what, because I don't know that ever got answered really. Why is it phased?
I've got some project comments later.
We basically broke it down into the maintenance recommendations versus the space changes, and the maintenance we feel are a higher priority to implement. And so we titled it phase 1, phase 2. I think the project itself, the remodeling and the maintenance upgrades would span multiple years. And so we're starting from the standpoint of the actual boiler itself, the actual air handlers, the actual chillers, the central pieces of equipment would be replaced first. And then as those are done, then the remodeling of any spaces that are needed to be accomplished as part of the phase 2 would take into account the ductwork, the lighting in those areas, other things like that. But we definitely recommend the maintenance of the central equipment happens first.
But the idea is that you would be hiring someone to run this project. It'd be one project, correct? Okay.
Right.
I think that's the confusing part for some to think that there's two phases. There's really one project with two parts to it that are going to overlap, but it's going to be one continuous construction project for a couple of years.
Correct. Yes.
Is that how we understand it, Supervisor Rowdy?
Just going through the material, I thought there was 2 phases because possibly the board could look at phase 1 and not look at phase 2.
I thought the same thing.
I was wrong. I looked at it.
Yeah.
When I was reading it, I thought it was good because we can divide it.
No.
No,
Can't divide it.
we can't take phase 2 off or postpone phase 2.
No. On project. Yeah, so if they're gonna run new ductwork, they're gonna run new plumbing through this room right here. Part of phase 2 is gonna replace ceiling tile, fix the drywall, paint the room as they bust holes through walls. That's in phase 2. Am I correct?
I do want to clarify that it could have been determined that you're only doing phase 1 or you're only doing phase 2. But if you decide to do both of them, then it's in your best interest to do them simultaneously.
Oh, so you're saying we could, because I didn't understand. I thought when we talked to general government that parts, or maybe you'd have to redo your numbers, but parts of phase 2 would have to go along with parts of phase 1.
If you're following the recommendation that the report lays forward of spending the $7.9 million, then you would do them simultaneously. You wouldn't necessarily stagger them.
Would there be a cost difference to do if we said the board just wanted to do phase 1, whatever that number is? Would there be additional cost to the county if phase 2 came 5 years down the road?
Certainly there'd be 5 years of construction
cost, but I'm just talking construction crossing paths.
There's there certainly is multiple mobilizations that would have to be accounted for. So there would be some additional costs. I'd probably look at it as each one of the costs are 5.9 or the 2 million stand alone on their own, and you might achieve savings by doing them simultaneously.
And part of the analysis was not only just to look at the mechanical side of the building and what's needs replacing, but part of this was efficiencies, our customer service, our security of our employees as part of this analysis. And that's what kind of phase 2 or part 2 of that, the mechanicals kind of stand alone on that. But as far as making us more efficient and customer centric, and security is a big portion of this on how we do that and where we have our customers come in and out, as we can attest this week to the issue we had this week with people walking through our building, videotaping people in offices wearing masks. You know, so it's very important. As part of this analysis was the space analysis on how can we be more efficient for our customers getting permits, bringing people into the same door, not just updating our AC on that. So that's why the Encompass project is that way. And we kind of wanted to show the mechanical side of it, but also the space needs analysis to get us to that point of security and more efficiency for our customers.
Did that answer your question, Supervisor Rowley? Not fully, because I understand the need for security. I got that. But I think some of this moving around, I can't get my head on.
I agree. That's why we asked them to come to committee of the whole, because I can't get my head around it either yet.
So I'm going to take that as a great segue, if you guys would allow.
Yep, go ahead.
Into what I'm just going to call part 2 of the study that we did. And so, like Mo had indicated, we did meet with all the different departments of the group. I think in the report you had, it shows the surveys that each one of them indicated as well. And so we had them fill out a survey. It talked about how they function, how they operate, the amount of people that they see on a daily basis from a customer standpoint, and just kind of how they function. So we get into kind of the growth and the really the staff piece of it now. So we had them fill out that survey. We then met with each one of them to have a conversation with them and really understand how they operated. And from that, that's where we are implementing kind of the plans that you'll see in front of you here. If you want to go to the next one, please. Thank you. And so we took it by level. One of the things to note is that you'll see that all of the plans are color-coded. They're color-coded by departments. That doesn't necessarily mean that all departments are moving. The color that you see, kind of the rooms coming through it, the transparent color, those are just departments that aren't planning to be changed, or if a department's moving, it's moving like for like. So we're just utilizing the space as is, no renovation happening in those spaces. The space that you see that has like a bubble to it, those would require some level of renovation, and depending on the department, the level of renovation is different depending on what their needs are. Some it's pretty minor, some it's quite drastic because they're moving from floors. So as you can see on the lower level here, the real plan of change here is really just the UW extension, moving that down to that lower level. If you want to flip to the next page, thank you. What that does and why we have space on that lower level, as we look at a customer-centric county, we really wanted to move those departments like ADRC, and vets up to the main level. Now that we have one main entrance, we wanted to make sure that all of our public service entities were on the main level and as close to the public entry as possible. And so we had to provide some space up on this main level for them to function here and be as close to that main door as possible. So as we look at being customer centric, ADRC moved up, vets moved up, and then UW extension moved down. And as you can see, the boardroom then had to be relocated as well. As you can see, we also have some renovations happening to the treasurer, land and service, land and water resources, and register of deeds. One of the things that we're doing there is, for the most part, the three bottom ones will be pretty limited in the renovation that we're doing, but we are moving land and water resources over to the other side, just as they are all public functions and they work very closely to each other. Again, as we're thinking of how we're going to service the public, there seemed to be that community, as the community came in, they'd had to bounce from one door to the next to take care of some of the needs that they had. So this way, there's kind of not a one-stop shop, kind of a two-stop shop for them, depending on what their needs are here. So we kind of relocated those, again, as we're trying to be more community-centric, creating kind of that atmosphere on this main level. And if you go up to the third floor, this is where you can kind of see some of the major changes. As you can see, we did move the boardroom up to what is the old, I think the west, conference room up there. We also are providing kind of a training and a conference room, training room next to that. That also could act as a pre-function, or as you have, like today, your public comments were upstairs. Ideally, your public comments could be in that space there. That way they're close to you guys. They're not a floor separate, so it doesn't seem like it's this huge separation between you and the public. That could be a good or a bad thing, however you take it. We are just designing it this way. And then also the government or general government division, we kind of relocated them all onto this third floor or this upper level, and really made them more of a combined unit so that they can function more effectively together as well. Any questions on the plans?
If I could just touch on Mr. Rowdy's question, and it kind of goes back to the original plan to say, what is it we want in this organization and the company? And when we went to the divisional structure, we found that we had departments spread out, and sometimes it's not only inconvenient or inefficient for employees, but it can be the same for customers as well. Hence, the example in environmental services, we have land and water and land information in two separate places. They can't benefit from the efficiencies of having people, a joint receptionist, people co-working on specific projects and so on. When customers come in to get a permit, they get run around to different places. The other thing is we wanted to make sure that we had some way for the customers when they came in, you see our temporary front desk, which has been tremendously received. I don't know how you all feel about it, but when I was with the EDC, I can't tell you how many times people would be wandering up on the second floor, say, I'm looking for mental health services or the clerk's office. And getting back to that security and the safety and the customer satisfaction, they get frustrated and they say, I've been in the basement, now I'm up here. So all these things, when we look at the construction that will need to be done on the equipment, and then we said, how do we take care of our most vulnerable or our most dependent citizens, the elderly, the ADRC, the veterans? We had the example the other day where the veterans coming in wheelchairs had to go downstairs and couldn't get on the elevator with the person that was pushing them. And things like that to say, well, if we're going to do this, let's do it right and make it in a way, at least our attempt to make it right. And obviously that's why we're showing it, because we want feedback and we can make changes. I will say this, the boardroom, and you say, why are we moving this nice boardroom upstairs? Well, a couple of obvious reasons. One, this gets the less traffic than just about anything in this building. It's meetings for you, right, that are very important. But secondly, because other departments have more foot traffic, we thought this space would be used better here. The other obvious reason is we have more space up there. Not only is it 20 to 25% larger naturally, but then with the spillover, we thought, one, we could spread out if necessary. If we don't have to spread out, we go back to normal. We've got room for people in the room. Then we also have spillover. So I'm sorry for the long answer, but that's just kind of the thought process that went behind it.
All right, so if there aren't any other further questions, I think we're going to move into just some examples of what that boardroom could look like, just so you guys can take a look at that.
So there isn't any specific designs. The previous, slides that Melissa presented really are a high-level overview of where departments fit. And there's a whole design process to figure out exactly how the rooms arrange in those spaces. And it's even possible that maybe we don't have quite the right exact placement of where some of the departments are, and the design process will help figure that out. Similarly, there is no answer or no preconceived solution for the boardroom. Frankly, you could just simply move up into that space that exists today and not spend any money on it, and move the AV technology that's up there that you have in this room, move your desks, move even that raised platform up there. But we want to show you the range, I guess, that we see as possible. This is a county boardroom that is very high end. It's got daylighting above. We actually cut holes in the roof to bring daylight into the space. Every surface that you can see other than the carpet is some sort of wood paneling, and this county is very proud of it and thinks it fits their values, but I don't know that that fits your values, but this is kind of the high-end look. If you go to the next slide, you can certainly save some money by eliminating some of the wood paneling on walls, and actually improve some of the acoustic performance by doing some acoustic panels. That's actually an acoustic panel right behind, but some of the side walls, I think, are just painted sheetrock. Still the raised dais and made out of millwork with wood veneer on it. Another project, another example where we, on the next slide, if there's still some wood trim. It's not permanent millwork. It's more of the movable desks, not too unlike what you have in the boardroom today. Probably a little bit more updated with technology connections and things like that in this example, but still has the acoustic paneling on the side. There's still some wood trim occasionally. You see the AV that's the screens hanging. That's definitely always a consideration today to make sure that boardroom is oriented so that organized and laid out so that everyone can see screens. The next slide, I believe this shows it's Chippewa County, Chippewa Falls, where as we built out a new courtroom in their previous supervisor's room, they decided to just move into a large conference room that they had in their courthouse. But to add a little bit of decorum to that conference room for the board meetings, we put some very simple wall paneling, just flat, basically the veneered MDF up on the wall with some wood trim around the perimeter without any reveals or relief or anything, and then a 6-inch raised platform that has a wood wall in front of it, much like you have there. So very flexible in organization, so the tables can be rearranged for training or a boardroom or anything, and everyone's oriented when there's presentations towards those screens on the left side of the table, left side of the photo. Next slide. The floor plan of that room, it's not too far off. It's actually a little bit smaller than the dimensions of what's available upstairs with the West Conference Room. The original layout was, they have 29 supervisors in their county, so 5 on the raised platform, much like here, and then the remaining people would be around in a table. They've obviously changed their orientation based on the picture that you previously saw. If you go to the next slide, we thought about your county here with 15 supervisors and 4 staff that are present in the meetings up at the front. So here we have seating for 19. It gets a little bit closer. Obviously, these are not necessarily taking 6 feet social distancing rules into account, but hopefully eventually we'll be beyond that. And certainly by the time any construction happens, we'll hopefully be beyond that. That leaves a lot of space for seating, public seating or other staff. And you can certainly have a podium towards the edge with presentation screens here that everyone can see. We go to the next slide. A little bit different layout. Oh, back one. There we go. A little bit different layout where instead of that kind of executive table organization, you have people facing each other different directions. presenter podium here, still the raised dais and a couple staff positions. But that accounts for the 19 people in a little bit different organization. There's a county we worked with in Illinois on the next slide that had something very similar. They oriented the room on a narrow way. So instead of rows of 2, they have rows of 5 and 7. But then the raised dais at the head of the room and a presenter podium right there, and still lots of room for public if it's needed. This is very similar to the proportions and the size of the room upstairs, by the way. The next slide just takes your actual room and shows a couple different layouts of how to fit 19 people. And what's left, these are approximately the existing pews that the seating that's in the room already. There's certainly a question of can they stay and be continued to be used? Should they be reupholstered? Should they be replaced? All of that can be discussed and decided later. But there's a lot of room to fit the 19 people in the well. A little bit of a horseshoe shape with some back tiers of 4 people per row. And the next slide shows the more of a classroom style orientation where the raised area might be here, might be tilted eventually a little bit so that it has some view of the audience of the public, but then the supervisors all facing the chair and staff, and then a presentation podium just adjacent to that front of the room. So, a lot of different options out there, and all of that can be decided. What's right can be decided if the project moves forward. Any questions on any of these, or thoughts or concerns?
So when you just say, for example, I guess my questions would be is, at what point and what's the role of the supervisors in this? Obviously, you guys are looking for, staff is looking for, some kind of an authority to move forward with hiring an architect and or construction manager, maybe similar to how you did the shop. But when do we have a role into saying, yeah, we like the idea of the boardroom going? Obviously, we're not going to tell you that your staff, I mean, who are we to say your staff doesn't want to move or do what you guys want to do? But clearly, we have experience with this county boardroom, realizing that we have times where, since I've been on the board for 5 years, we probably have averaged 5 times that we've had to go out to Unity School because of the issues. And there's probably been other times where we've had many people in the hallways, and we have had the meetings here, and they couldn't all get in the space. And for me to think, like what we talked in general government, to move the county boardroom upstairs was ballpark $400,000. To me, it seems like for $100,000, you can blow out a couple walls in here and keep the boardroom right here. Again, we're not seeing that as an option. We don't see the numbers as options. And at what point do we actually have the ability to say, we like it, we don't like it, give us option A and B? Right now, we have one option we're being shown. Can you just talk a little bit about those concerns?
Sure. I think right now this is a high-level overview of the space needs analysis on what is being recommended and what works, what we're looking at for staffing and customer needs. Moving the boardroom upstairs or remodeling this boardroom, the costs are going to be very similar because it's just a different room. With that, we like that room up there just because it had 20% more capacity and better traffic flow for our customers here. As we go into design, next stages of the project is more detailed on getting the approval of the plans and the final drawings on what goes where and how much goes into each room. If the county board wants to spend a lot on audiovisual and get that system up more, or spend less on furnishing, I think at that point is where we'll do that with the budgeting process and looking at the line items at that point.
We'll still have an opportunity to control this budget, you're saying, by approving, and I know we're going to get into this when we get to the resolution, but I think it's okay for us to discuss this now. You're saying that just because this is a presentation, it doesn't mean that we're gonna spend $7 million or $5 million.
Correct. Our base budgeting number out the analysis are these numbers to go out and look at financing for the project as we start nailing down components of the project is where the budgeting comes into that respect.
So you have a budget you presented to us, right? Every budget, you probably could have done the same thing for 20, 30% less. You could have done it for 20, 30% more. Very easy. You could swing a budget probably quite a bit, right? Is that a true statement or not? Not on the mechanical side, maybe, but I'm talking about second phase, the $2 million side. It seems like that's more of a wish list.
I would say that the costs are directly related to the scope. And right now, everyone in this room is making an assumption about what the scope is. And Melissa and I make an assumption about the scope. I presented a range of what the boardroom might look like as an example. And I can say that $2 million doesn't support that first one that I showed you. But it certainly supports, an appropriate, the second or third one image-wise. We're just kind of understanding, from our 6 months of working with Vince and Mo and Chad, understanding the values of Polk County and our previous presentations, we just felt like, okay, the amount of square footage that we're showing to be relocated or remodeled and the expectation that you have is probably fits in that $2 million project ballpark. And there's certainly wiggle room within that to cut that by 20% if that's necessary. I rarely see someone say, well, let's wiggle room 20% higher. We only work with public sector entities, and once the budget is set, we know you can't go over that. So
what's our square foot cost of construction for these phases? You must know roughly what square footage number this turned out to be. What?
Sure. The average of the remodeling spaces, I don't have it for the phase one mechanical because that doesn't really get applied. I could calculate that, but it's not really how we think about the mechanical electrical upgrades. I know the numbers off the top of my head, so if you give me a second after the question, I can calculate it. The remodeling itself is $60 a square foot for the on average across all the areas that Melissa talked about. So some areas are going to be a little bit heavier remodeling, a little bit more wall removal and finish replacement. Some places are going to be lighter remodeling where we just need to cut a door in. So there are going to be some areas that are probably $100 a square foot, and some areas that are $20 a square foot. But it averages to about $60 a square foot for the areas we're touching.
So why wouldn't you include the mechanicals? If we're typically bidding a project, we did the highway shop, we knew a square foot price to build that highway shop, and that included mechanicals, parking lot, it included the whole project. You just give me a ballpark on all in at the $7 million, what the square foot price is?
$92 a square foot.
Okay.
My recollection is 86,000 square feet. Is that right?
Okay. That seems reasonable, just as a square foot number, if you're touching that much square footage.
Yeah, and if you were to replace a building this size with this function today, it'd be $250 a square foot.
Well, that would be a good number for us to hear because people say, why couldn't you, we built a highway shop for 10 million or 15 million or who knows what it was really. Mo might know.
It was $1 million under budget.
I wasn't being sarcastic. I really wasn't. Reading the whole we're pretty good spot, right? Most, are you the only one that really knows what it's on? But what would a building, if we're talking 80, so your quick numbers again, we got 80,000 square feet we're talking about?
86,000.
What would be the number to replace that 86,000 square feet?
Times 250. 21.5 million.
Okay. Supervisor,
I don't know, there, I got it. So with all this efficiency that you're gonna gain, is there any potential of reduction of needed staff?
I can only answer anecdotally that there were many departments that we talked with who said, if we're co-located, we could have a single receptionist. I don't know if that actually means employees go away. I can't speak to that at all.
There was one department because of COVID and how that they're functioning now, that they have decided that they don't actually need as many staff in the building. And so that is represented in these plans too. So as you know, everything's progressing. Some departments are kind of taking that into account and reducing their square footage of their needs here in the building. But that doesn't, there is still a large population of people that need to be in this building to function for the community space.
Well, the other question will obviously be with the mechanical changes that you're gonna have and the technology that we have today. Are you gonna need the same number of maintenance staff to manage that equipment that you did for equipment that was engineered 50 years ago?
Yes. Yeah, we still have the same amount on there. We did add, naturally, we added the new highway facility in their second building. But we still have the other facilities to maintain.
They're gonna hire more employees?
No.
Doug?
Mr. Administrator, I'm not speaking for you. I'm just saying we were discussing staff and needs and the move and that. And you talked about because of COVID and remote working, you said a lot of that could remain, and we haven't really had finished studying on that.
That's a very good point. We have people who did go work remotely. A lot of people that initially were bringing them back. Many of our offices and departments need office space because people come here to the building, but there are some social workers maybe who spend most of their time out. I think what's happening is you're going to see more people work remotely occasionally or maybe part of the week because they'll be out making calls on customers or clients and then they'll have to report back in. And I think our office space, especially in like the community services division, represents, I forget what they call them, but like little satellites where different people use the same spot at different times. Now, right now during COVID, yeah, right, because, yeah, and so people are moving out. So that's enabled us to put different departments under the old system. Now they're under one division. That's enabled us to move them together. And some departments have less square footage while others need more. And I know Bob Kazmierski's been beating on me all last couple of months about how busy they are with all their projects and permitting process. There's an example where we actually are going to have to take some of those positions that may not be there next year because we've changed and move them into the environmental services division, the FTEs, because they're doing more work, more permits. We expect growth in the county. They're going to be busy. That seems to be the hot area right now.
And also with that, what the space analysis found that although we're in a 1974 building and there are many more needs on staff and things we're doing now, the building square footage still fits our needs. We don't have to expand this building. We can still do this in the same envelope, which is very good these days and not having to expand a building.
And one thing we could recognize, Chad does have his building fund can. Anyone wants to donate? All right, I think we probably got to call Supervisor O'Connell. Oh, yeah, they did talk to us about that. Can you explain about that?
Yeah, I can. We didn't talk about it tonight. Our recommendation in the report is that there are not any major problems that we see with the jail structure today. We don't see a use for it, as Mo just mentioned. The space needs by all the operations in the in the government center are satisfied by the square footage of the government center. There is some cheap storage in the building now that a number of departments are utilizing. We suggest not investing any money in the building to upgrade it because there are no imminent needs right now to upgrade it. We suggest not demolishing it because it would just cost money to demolish it, and it's cheap free storage for now. But we also acknowledge that the county, the people who are using it for storage should think long-term about weaning down their reliance on the building for storage in case, there is a catastrophic mechanical failure or a roof leak or something like that in the future, say 10 years from now, where there's no space need that's been presented to reuse the structure, and it's just long-term a better investment to demolish the jail than to try and fix it at that point. And in the meantime, before that time happens, if some function does pop up that needs square footage, if the county has an asset where you can remodel the inside of the building and whatever need might present itself. So our recommendation is just status quo with the jail. No investment right now.
Mr. Chairman, follow up on that. This came a few years ago when I was on health at Human, and I'm not quoting it exactly how it was said, but I'll call it one of the divisions in the health department. They were actually asking if they couldn't move over there. And we'd have to do much more research on it because it's a long time ago, but it was just something I remember from hearing about the basement over there.
Sure. We did interview every department. We did interview every department as part of our process, and there was not any desire that was expressed about moving into that building. Everyone felt like being in this citizen-centered, one entry, kind of one-stop shop in this building was what they were looking for when we interviewed people. So that certainly there may have been space pressures, that you're referring to, that people wanted to go to that other building, and that certainly is a possibility in the future if the county continues to have that structure.
Yeah, this committee of the whole, so it's just talk, and we're going to be kicking this can again here. I think we've asked a lot of good questions, and I appreciate you guys coming back again, and I think I'd take a motion to adjourn the committee of the whole if you guys are okay with that. Supervisor Luke, make a motion second to go back into regular session, or do we have to convene?
Can I make a comment before we go into open session?
Sure.
Well, I support the project. We've been planning on this for years. Our former administrators have realized that right now is an opportune time as far as interest rates and things cost more next year. But I would listen to your presentation at general government. And I went to a couple town board meetings and the school board, and the people out there, our constituents, has got to pay for this. And if we go back to our constituents and listen to the frustration, the unemployment, really everybody's concerns out there, I don't know if we'd get 20% support for the general project as to the opportune time to do this. I could see maybe if the economy and everything, COVID is ending probably in 2022. But I think we all got to listen to our constituents and see right now where we're really going to get support to move this in 20 or 21. There's a lot of frustration and really a lot of hardships out there right now. I sure question either this year or next year going ahead with this project. Sure. It's just tough out there, and we got to realize that outside this boardroom is where we got to get the support. I want support from my constituents before I'm.
So could we, just to answer that question a little bit about the financing side of it, we had some at other general governments, whether it's Vince or Chad, maybe it's Vince, could address John's questions about You know, are you saying that, you know, if you ask for a referendum, would you get the
No,
support?
referendum never passed. That's our
Okay.
job to educate the people and make the decisions. But when I talked about, the time that we're thinking about doing this, people would say, are you nuts? We just got done with the highway building.
You answer that question, so when you talk about it.
Well, and
About what Dana's
to
said.
the credit of the past administrator, Dana, and if you recall, he was kind of the financial wizard when it came to this. And when I came, I spoke with many people with financial backgrounds saying how smart Polk County looked because of the process they set up in this ability to take a loan or have debt. And they set it up such that the beauty of debt is it does not deduct from your levy, right? Our levy is limited, but we can borrow. And I think you heard from the audit report, we're at 4% of our capacity in borrowing. So we're very low at what we borrow. The thought being, if we borrow money and set up a system to keep it consistent over time, we know that over time there are going to be capital expenditures. There always is. And how many of you have been involved with a village or a city where all of a sudden things break down and a roof goes bad and all of a sudden you need a new building, you know, something's demolished or whatever. This is a way to plan in advance what it is we need. It doesn't come out of our levy, and hence it won't affect tax payments and tax rates on the citizens if we borrowed our maximum amount here. So it's set up to that. So, you know, the nice thing is the taxpayer won't see an increase in taxes. Yes, we're spending money, but if we didn't, 5 years from now when things break down, all of a sudden we're in a crunch and we're spending it then, and that's when I think citizens really get upset.
Supervisor Duncanson?
I just have a comment, and maybe the question should wait till we're talking about the resolution later or whatever. But are we looking at financing, as you say, debt? Are you talking about a bond issue or a general obligation note? Or
Well,
what are you talking about?
The resolution that the board will take up tonight just authorizes the administrator to authorize staff to investigate financing options. The county, if you remember from Brian Della's presentation, the county has employed different financing options over the years, whatever was in the best interest of the taxpayer. You know, we bonded for the jail project 16, 17 years ago. We rebonded that 2 years ago at much better rates. We took out a loan for that general obligation debt because we got a better interest rate from a bank than we would have gotten with bonding once you take out the fees for bonding. So as far as what type of financing, again, that comes down to what we evaluate and what we consult with general government about. But, you know, we look at the different options in financing. I can't tell you flat out now what kind of financing it would be. Could be bond, could be a loan, could be GO, could be any of those kind of things.
So if I understand them correctly, we would need to pass this resolution tonight in order to be able to answer those questions, correct?
Right. So this preliminary resolution, we can't investigate bonding. We can't instruct our financial people to investigate bonding, can't talk to banks, any of that kind of stuff without a preliminary resolution to investigate it. There's no obligation. It's just so that we can start to give you something concrete regarding financing.
Joe? There's one thing that I don't know if I'm so far back out of it, but I didn't until last month even hear anything about this. I think I was standing outside and some people were saying they can't believe how much it's going to cost to power wash this. And I mean, it seems to me that general government is holding everything to themselves and not letting anything out. I mean, if people would know about this, they could dig deeper, and you wouldn't have to spend so much time going through all this hassle because people would be up to date on it.
I can tell you, I sit on general government, we're not holding nothing back. We have public meetings, they're on the video. We have minutes, so there is nothing holding back.
Well, the thing is it's being poorly distributed. And I sat in on one of the general government meetings one time, and the words that was said, I was very upset with is, well, we don't gotta take this to the county board, we can pass it here.
Well, we just brought it to the county board, so I don't know what you heard.
Not this, this was this was like in February. It was something else. This is, well, we don't have to take this to the full board.
Yeah, so we're not on that agenda. I mean, we're gonna let it kind of everyone talk about this, but I think we're done. I hear your point, and I think that's why general government, I'll speak for general government.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mike?
I've been listening to all of this, and one comment I wanted to make, and I had a copy of the Wold's July 9 draft, which on page 10 made a reference that in the human services heating system, we installed 2 hot water high efficiency boilers on the first floor of the human services building in 2019. And one of the things, I think if we have financing in a substantial amount of $5 million or more or whatever, the question's going to come up, has the county neglected maintenance, renovation, and so costs over the last several years, and we're doing catch up at this point in time? Or do we have a good response to that? And there were a number of these things where the equipment would have a useful life of 40 years and it's 38 years of elapsed or whatever. And I don't know if we assume that it's going to go bad at 40, where we're doing it more or less all at once. And a question of whether we have had over these past years a maintenance program that we are proud of, and that we've been doing our job well. And some of these are AD and that sort of thing. And I think I'm just suggesting we should be prepared to address those issues.
Sure, Mo, you want to address that?
Sure. Yes, we do have a maintenance program, not only with our own staff, but we have a contract maintenance contract currently with Johnson Controls for replacement, preventive maintenance on all our units. The main focus on the study here showing was the end of life due to the 1974 equipment is at the end of its useful life. So many of these boilers we have right now have been replaced, or I should say many of the components have been replaced, but are still failing due to the overall piece of the unit. But no, we do have a preventive maintenance program. Staff is consistently working on those and doing our maintenance on those also.
And I'd like to throw something in there too, Joe, for you and your comments about, and to Mike, is that I've been on general government since I've been on the board. And I know clear back when Dana was here, this goes back 4 or 5 years ago, we put, I believe $70,000, I think I remember the number, he came to us and said, we need to start looking at this end of life stuff. So 4 or 5 years ago, they were talking about the needs of this building. So I just know, being on general, that it's been talked about for at least 5 years that I'm aware of. And Russ has been on general government a lot longer than I've been. Do you have any comments about this, Russ? Since general government seems to be holding back information?
No, nothing on holding back information, but it used to be even where you couldn't sit on finance and on personnel. There was a time that's what it was. And there was a lot of, people doubting what other committees were doing, and we had no administrator. But You know, now, I mean, how many committees is general government? You know, I mean, the financial part is just a small part of general government. So, and I don't know, I mean, I've advocated for a long time that we all get the same information at the same time. But there's only one way that could happen, and this would be our committee. And, you know, we just can't really operate that way. I don't think people are gonna come here and sit here for 10, 12 hours, but I know this building has been almost on the agenda since I got on the county board. I mean, it's needed attention. We've given it some. You know, the security never used to be the threat that it is today. And, you know, literally right now, anybody can walk right in the front door and do whatever they want to do. I mean, and Dana did really start to push the security portion, and, you know, and we set money aside, and this has been the plan for a long time. It's just, you know, it's who's gonna take the step, who's gonna do it. I mean, we did it with the highway facility. I mean, we balked a long time. We tried a referendum. We literally almost waited till the building fell down. We just got out of there in time, I think. But we'll do the same thing here if we don't take a step. We just got to take the first step and get it started.
Excuse me if I said holding back. That was not what I meant. It's not holding back, it's getting out more information.
Sure. Well, this is the first time we've got this information.
Yeah.
Our county board, I don't know what resolution was, how many months ago. So we passed the resolution to hire this firm, I don't know, 6 months ago?
Yep.
So 6 months ago, our county board passed the resolution to hire these folks to come in and do this analysis. And so, yeah, I get what you're saying.
It's just I wish that more.
That's what we're doing here tonight.
Yeah, you got chairs from all the committees and that's where I would like to see, you know, getting together more often and explaining what is going on. Sure, because there's a lot of us, we can't, Vince can and some of the other ones, but I can't go to every single meeting. But
we're gonna do this committee of the whole, and we're gonna take one step at a time.
Well, I appreciate it, Joe.
And you're gonna get to kick this can, and you're gonna know a lot about it. Literally kick the can.
Very good, thank you.
All right, we had a first and a second. I call for the vote. All in favor of ending, what are we in, close, or committee of the whole, say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Do we have a motion to go back in? Do I need a motion to convene in? No. Okay, we'll skip that. We're on number 19 now. Motion to act on matters considered and recommended by the committee of the whole, noticed in number 16, 19A. Discuss possible action regarding resolution 33-20, resolution to authorize administrator to investigate financing for government center update.
Mr. Chair,
Do we have a motion?
could we take a 5-minute break?
Not yet.
We've got 2 hours.
No.
I'll second Mike Pritchard.
Okay, we got a first by Luciano, a second by Pritchard. John, if you need to get up and use the restroom, go ahead. Supervisor Master used to just get up and leave. I appreciate you asking. So I'm gonna let administrator.
Real quickly, now John's got me thinking about it.
Let's hurry up. John's gotta go.
No, this is simply a resolution to authorize the investigation of financing. So this is not committing anything. It's not committing to buying in on this project. We're still going to talk about this in the future. But Chad, our general government says we need authorization to go to these lending sources to say, yes, we got a commitment. We want to investigate. That's all this resolution is.
And I promise we'll get real quick through a couple things and we'll go. We got a question? Supervisor Rowdy?
This might not come out right to Chad, but are we gonna look at phase 1 and phase 2 in his thinking so that we can look at that later?
So my approach, I believe, will be, I'll talk to the reps and say, we want to look at what bonding phase one or financing phase one and the first year looks like, phase two and the second year, what would they look like together in 1 year? Look at those different scenarios so that it gives you a good picture.
Was there another question? I seen a hand up? No. All right. So we had a first and a second, right, for resolution 3320. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Same sign by carried. All right, we're going to go to 20C. Resolution to adopt Polk County Forest 15-year comprehensive. How long of a presentation is this going to be?
I can make it real brief, and I'm mostly here for questions. The 15-year plan, as it states, is due every 15 years. This happens to be the year that it's due. Essentially, the plan was developed beginning in January. The Environmental Services Committee approved it in June. The plan was pretty much developed with the mission statement of the forest that includes producing raw forest products, recreation, providing a reasonable return to townships, and protecting the environment. With that in mind, I'm here for questions.
Do we have a motion to approve this resolution 27? We got a first, and you got a second. So John first, Kim O'Connell second. Are there any other questions? Don't see none. All in favor by saying aye. Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Approved. On executive committee, we got, no, 19A? No, we did that.
Oh, never mind. I'm sorry. You're right.
I'm on a roll, Administrator.
Sorry.
We're trying, John. Executive committee, we have a resolution 33-20 to amend ordinance, Polk County Board of Supervisors Rules Ordinance concerning moving UW extension to general government. Does someone want to discuss 33-20? Do we have a motion? So Kim O'Connell made the motion. Do we have a second? Supervisor Arcan seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor by saying aye. Aye, approved.
Said it was 2/3 majority because there was unanimous.
General Government Resolution 2220, resolution to amend budget to incorporate carried funds over. Do we have a motion to approve? Supervisor Arcan, second by Supervisor Rook. Do we have any discussion? Supervisor O'Connell? We can address that.
I can. So we had the health services fund. We had the fund with 113, and children's gave back 202. So it's a net take of 80. So.
Any other discussions? Seeing none, all in favor by saying aye. Aye, approved. Let's take a 5-minute break before we go into closed session. Yes,
One quick question.
Rowdy.
What happened to environmental services 20A and 20D?
I don't know. It was on the consent agenda. You already approved it.
It's already done.
We're in break now.
You got it.
Okay, we'll redo that. So we had a motion by Jay Luke and a second by Duncanson to go into closed session. All in favor by saying aye. Carried. And will we document who is going to stay in closed session for the record? So how are we doing with Mr. Pritchard in closed session? That is okay, the way you guys.
Thank you, Chair. Got my hand out.
Okay. So Supervisor Pritchard, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
so for you to be in closed session, would you be comfortable to just come just inside the door and sit in here for closed session?
Sure. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, we're gonna wait until he comes in here, and then you can just shut everyone down. Go ahead and stop everything. Mike, are you comfortable to stay in here? Or you want to? Thanks, Mike. Are your video back on, Chad? Okay, so we have been, we've reconvened into open session. We got discussion and possible action regarding matters discussed in closed session as noticed in 26A, resolution number 31-20, resolution regarding lime quarry request for proposal. Do we have a motion? Rowdy made the motion. Do we have a second? Second, Duncanson. Any further discussion? John?
Every year, but I got on the board on 96 and from 96 to 2006. If I remember every year when it came to passing the budget, I know there was times when the lime quarry put $500,000 to balance the budget. We look forward to the profit from the lime quarry every year. I can tell you, and you can ask any farmer, anybody who's used that lime quarry, we've got a gold mine there. We heard all the things negative of why we should sell. I don't believe anybody can realize what an attorney general decision is going to be.
Excuse me, John. You were in closed session. You cannot discuss that.
I thought that was out in the public.
No, that is not in the public. That was in closed session.
Oh, okay. Well,
You can talk about your history. You can talk about the money. You can't talk about anything that was done in closed session.
well, the general consensus is when we had a manager there on site and he was in charge of the workers and the operation, it made money every year when there was a manager there, and I think everybody knows that. I think this needs a lot more investigation, and I would like to hear from the county side how it could be made profitable, because it definitely always was profitable and it can be made profitable. I don't believe that you could buy any buyer to say that they would have to continue selling, because anybody in private industry, they're going to only operate one way, and that's for profit. I understand that the crushing that was done last year through Kramer was the only business that we had. I don't know how far we reached out, but I had meetings with the Federated Co-op people, and they believe that there was other people that came to them and said, who did the crushing and at what cost? And if we only had one bid and accept only one bid, I think that's a danger point right there.
Okay, is there any other questions or discussion about resolution 31-20? Seeing none, I will call the question. Let's do a roll call vote. I believe some people want to be on the record. A vote of is to support the resolution that was discussed. And again, this is resolution 31-20. And I guess I would like the resolution read maybe by Corporation Counsel, so we all understand what the resolution actually says again. You're just saying the last be it for the resolve line, Kim? Okay.
Okay, so just the three resolved clause or the last resolved?
Could do the last three resolved.
Okay. Now therefore be it resolved that the Polk County Board of Supervisors authorizes the county administrator to issue an RFP to explore the possibility of selling the lime quarry. And be it further resolved that the administrator must include required assurances that protect the future availability of quality agricultural lime to area farmers as a requirement for all responsible entities who respond to the RFP. Be it further resolved, this resolution in no way binds the county, and the county is not required to sell the quarry, regardless of the responses.
Okay, roll call vote.
Okay, Jay Luke. Oh, I'm sorry, Fran Duncanson, I apologize.
Aye.
Russ Arcand.
Yeah.
John Bonaprise.
No.
Joe Demmeling.
Yeah.
Doug Rowdy.
Yes.
Steve Warndale.
Yes.
Chris Nelson.
Yes.
Tracy LeBlanc. Dan Mark. Michael Pritchard.
Yes.
Sharon Kelly. Jim O'Connell. And Jay Luke.
Yeah.
All right, so we have 12 yeses and 1 no.
The resolution passes. Supervisor announcements. Anyone have any announcements? I see none. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye.